All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back for another episode of SCMP MMA Live Chat. Me, I'm Hyon Ko, and right next to me in the middle is Tom Taylor. And joining us today, special guest Cole Shelton. Thank you, Cole. Appreciate the time, man. And another Canadian on the show. People are starting to call this chat the South Canadian Morning Post, and it's kind of true. But I think next week we'll have somebody that's not Canadian. But anyways, Cole, how you doing, man? How's life? I know you're super busy. You do a lot of shit, so let me know what's going on.
Yeah, I'm doing good. Just trying to get out ahead of all these interviews so I can take I'm almost done for like my shows the rest of December, so that'll be good. So I can actually have some time off for once. But yeah, doing good. How are you?
Good, man. Tom, what about you, man? You were on the show a couple of weeks back. Now you're stepping in for Nick again. How's life over there?
Not much has changed since last time, man. Just as Cole knows, it's just getting colder and colder up here.
Yeah.
Wearing more and more layers, trying to stay warm. But yeah, same old, man. Just grinding.
All right, well, let's jump right into it, man. I think what was it, yesterday or less than 12 hours ago that news broke. Mark Ramondi of ESPN, he tweeted out that Nico Price tested positive for the marijuana, the Mary Jane, the sticky icky, the chronic, whatever you want to call it. And man, it seems like it's a repetitive situation with the Nevada State Athletic Commission, because it seems like no other commissions are doing this. Have you do you remember another commission busting fighters so much for for marijuana violations, or does it even come up in other tests? I have no idea, man. Like, I just know that they've busted I think more than 10 fighters this year and fined them and suspended them. So Cole, man, is this wrong, or is this something that we just have to you just have to realize and you just have to live with, or should the fighters be able to fight back? Because it seems like they're not.
Oh, I think it's terrible. Like, what's the difference between weed and alcohol? Like, you could drink, not that you're going to, but you could drink like 2 days before you fight, the day before you fight. As long as you're not drunk and hungover, you still fight. But you can't smoke 2 days before. Like, it's not in your system anymore, but you're still going to get fined. You're still going to get suspended. And the funniest thing is, whenever Nevada releases their, like, whatever they call them, their commission meetings, and they say they're meeting with the names, it's always like Tim Elliott, Luis Pena. You're like, oh, I know what this is for. They're going to go get suspended for marijuana because they literally just fought. And the worst is when it's like Trevin Jones, who took the fight on, what was it? Well, he took it on like 6 days notice. The guy doesn't know he's going to be in the UFC, so he was smoking, and then his win gets overturned now because he smoked 6 days before his fight. I think it's dumb.
Yeah, especially when you are getting paid a lot of money to fight and they're taking a certain percentage. That could be, some people, like, they get paid like 100K, 150K, they get busted. What was the percentage that they took from him? Do you guys remember?
They didn't say a percentage, but I think it was 8,500.
Yeah.
They
Yeah,
took, so whatever.
should be that. I think that is a certain percentage of his fight
Mhm.
purse, because nowadays they don't release uh the purses anymore. The Las Vegas doesn't release them, and the UFC definitely are not going to release the purses, right? So the numbers, do you know why? Tom, have you heard anything about that? Is why they don't do that anymore?
I have no idea why, but that strikes me as a problem right away. I mean, there's already a transparency problem in this sport when it comes to payment and things of that nature. If you're, creating new secrets and, pulling the veil over things like that, I mean, that strikes me as a big problem.
Yeah, it is. It is a problem that I don't know. I don't know if there's anything that we can do about it, right? It's do and on top of that, the fighters, do they want the public to know how much they're making? Probably not, right? So they don't care. They're not going to be screaming from the rooftops like, release the numbers, right? They're not going to do that, because some of these guys are probably getting paid a tremendous amount of money compared to other guys that should be getting paid way more. And you start to compare, each other. Now, going back to the marijuana violation, is there something that they can do in 2021? Because I believe marijuana is legal in Las Vegas. They're selling it probably on every street corner at some cafe or whatever, right? So, what can they do, Cole, to fix this? Because I don't like these commissions, man. I'm a person that doesn't believe in commissions. I think commissions should be gone. Like, they should be very limited in their power. They should just control like what's happening at the events, but they should not be in control of taking people's money. So what can they do to fix this?
Oh, I just think it's simple. If someone shows up to the fight, they look high, you probably don't let them fight. Other than that, who cares if they smoked after they weighed in or whatever? As long as they're physically not high the day of the event, I couldn't care less. They smoked 2 days before, 3 days before. I just think like it has to be like an eye test now, like because who knows how long this was in Nico Price's system for? Like it could have been from like a week and a half ago, and it's still in there, and that had nothing to do with like it has no impact on him. Like I think you kind of have to judge it by like an eye test, which is kind of hard. But I think that's kind of how you have to go through it. Like you can tell someone's drunk, you can tell someone's high pretty easily. Like, I think it's just how you have to view it as.
Yeah, but there's ways to like get around that. You put a little Visine in, and guys that are veterans in the smoke game, they don't look like they're high. Look at Snoop Dogg. Does he ever look like he's high? He just looks like Snoop Dogg.
I think that's just his normal state.
Yeah, so it's like if it's your normal state, no one's gonna be able to. But if you're drunk, let's say you're drunk, right? Because I don't even know this information. If you're drunk and they test you and they find alcohol in your system, they said that you had alcohol in your system or you were drunk during the fight, can they suspend you and fine you? The athletic commission? Do you guys know?
I don't know actually, but that's a good question. I mean, I'm sure it's against the rules to be drunk in a fight because I mean that would give you one small advantage in the fact that you're less likely to feel pain. You just become this invincible zombie. But I don't know. Cole, do you know?
I have no clue. I assume it would be some kind of suspension, like similar to marijuana.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. It'd be interesting because I know in like other countries, there's people that do get drunk and like go like Thai, like in Muay Thai. I'm guaranteeing you, there's guys out there that are drunk and they go and fight all the time. So, I don't know. That's an interesting question. I wonder if that will ever come up in the future. Like, we'll see like breaking news. Who's the guy that's a big drinker in the UFC? Do you guys know anybody that's like
Donald Cerrone likes his Budweiser?
Okay, there you go. Breaking news. Breaking news. Donald Cerrone is fined and suspended for being drunk during his fight against Nico Price. That comes out 2 days later. Like I wonder if that will ever happen. If it does, then it's just another reason for me to hate the commissions, and get rid of them. But I don't know. It's just some of the stuff that the commissions do, I'm very confused by it all, and I just think like if the UFC they pretty much govern themselves when they go to other countries, right? Because other countries don't have commissions, and they do a good job. I don't see why they shouldn't be able to just do that in the States. You know what I mean? And people are saying like, oh, you need to have somebody watch the UFC, but I'm pretty sure UFC has so much power in Las Vegas that even with the athletic commissions, it's just like they're just hand in hand, man. They're just together. You know what I mean? They're just one entity. So if you could take away the commissions, I feel like it's all right. But yeah, all that smoking, and Tyson he said he smoked before the fight against Roy Jones Jr. What'd you think about that? Roy Jones Jr. versus Mike Tyson fight. Was it better than the Jake Paul and Nate Robinson fight?
It was better than I thought. I thought like I had very low expectations, but I'm young. This is the first time I've ever saw Mike Tyson fight live. I might have watched it when I was young and don't really remember, but like for me, I just had to see it. I had very low expectations. Like I thought it was going to be very limited punches, like not much action. It actually surprised me how good Mike Tyson looked. I thought he won the fight, but it was an exhibition. I saw people complaining. They're like, oh, I bet Mike Tyson. If you're betting on an exhibition match, I think you need to see some help. Like, I don't know who was actually betting on an exhibition match between two 50-year-olds, but the Jake Paul, Nate Robinson thing, it stole the show. Even for like Tom knows, like that's been all the clicks for us for the past couple of days.
Yeah, man. I mean, that guy has caught on with the demographic that doesn't usually watch boxing, and they've totally latched onto his boxing career in huge numbers. So I don't think he's going to get the Conor McGregor fight or anything, but I don't think we've seen the last of Jake Paul. That's for sure.
And Evander Kane's been calling him out, who's a current NHL player. I'm like, when are you going to have a fight? And when are you supposed to train if you're playing in the NHL?
He's not going to train. He's just going to go and fight him, which it makes it even better, which makes it even more exciting that this guy is just going to be not have no training in boxing and just go in there and put on some gloves and fight Jake Paul and probably gonna knock him out, right? Like this dude, is he an enforcer in hockey or?
He's tough.
He's tough, but boxing's totally different. Like in
Yeah,
hockey, you have one hand on the guy's jersey and you hit with the other. You can't really do that in boxing. So his whole fighting is like it's totally different. Where if Jake Paul, his boxing has looked a lot better from what his past two fights is. Like as much as people don't like him or don't think he should be boxing, like he is taking this sport seriously and he has looked like much improved.
yeah. Boxing has just become this. I don't even know what it's become. It's become just weird, right? Like it's a weird space right now with YouTubers and 50-year-old guys fighting like they're in the backyard of at a barbecue. Like a lot of people describe that Tyson versus Roy Jones Jr. fight as a fight between your uncles in the backyard of a barbecue. And it's like that's kind of true. And you're paying $50 or $70 or how much the pay-per-view costs to watch it. But to be honest with you, I liked it because you got to see some good performances by some rappers that I didn't even well, I knew the rappers, but it just like I don't really pay attention to music as much as I did when I was younger. But it's still cool to see that Wiz Khalifa and like a couple other rappers are still around actually making good, decent music. You know what I mean? Not that new stuff. What are you, Cole? What are you into? Are you into rap?
No, I'm into country. I'm from a small town. That's all we listen to.
Okay, country's good. Country's good. I like all of it, but yeah, it's just it's I don't know, man. But the commentary was weird too, right? Because Sugar Ray seemed like he did not like Mauro Ronaldo. Did you get that feeling during the commentary?
Yeah, and Snoop Dogg stole the show. That guy, when Nate Robinson got knocked out, I was laughing at his commentary.
Snoop Dogg is the best. I don't know why people hate Snoop Dogg, man. I like Snoop Dogg's commentary as long as it's for that.
He's good in small doses, like a couple. Like Jake Paul and Nate Robinson is the perfect fight for Snoop Dogg to be in the commentary booth for. Same with Mike Tyson and Roy Jones Jr. It's just two like not really real fights that Snoop Dogg can just make everyone laugh while watching like a funny fight.
I'd say, you've got these haters that are complaining that Snoop Dogg's, damaging the integrity of this boxing event. Look at what you're watching.
Yeah.
You're watching like a YouTuber fight an NBA player and you expect integrity and class. Of course not. Snoop Dogg's as classy as it's going to get for that, man. I mean, I love Snoop.
It's just Snoop Dogg is great, man. I'm forever a fan of Snoop Dogg, but yeah, it's just he needs to just commentate those. Like when he was commentating the Contender series, it was fun, like you said, in small doses. But after a while, you're like, okay, like we need to get someone serious. Like once you saw like Paul Felder and Michael Bisping go in there and start commentating, then you're like, okay. Yeah, we don't need Snoop Dogg in there. But yes, for those boxing matches, and I guess he's got some deal going on where he's going to commentate some boxing league for that streaming site or whatever. And yeah, and hey, I don't even care about boxing, but I'm gonna watch it just because Snoop just will clown everybody. That's like something that commentators will never do, but Snoop will do it. Like he'll clown you if you got knocked out, and that's what's hilarious. And hey, I'm there for it. Snoop Dogg, keep doing what you're doing, man. And he's like what, like 80 years old, and he's still putting it in, right?
What did you guys think of Izzy's commentary for that fight?
He was a lot better than I thought for not being in the commentary booth. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if the UFC saw that and they're gonna think about putting him on the desk or commentary booth at some point.
I loved at one point, Mauro was plugging one of the sponsors. It was like a betting partner or something. And Izzy's like, why would you bet on this fight? Saying what we were all thinking. I'm like, ooh, maybe don't say that when we're talking about one of the sponsors of the fight. But other than that, I thought he was pretty good.
Mauro, we haven't seen him for a while, right? And he just came out with the long hair. And has he had long hair for a while? I haven't seen him in a while. So
I mean, it didn't come from nowhere. He had to grow it out, I guess.
Yeah, I'm saying like it kind of shocked me a little bit. He's kind of going old school, like 80s rock band look, and it's cool, whatever. But yeah, like all that skeptical. But one thing that that was interesting is I think before or after that show, Izzy, he did an interview with Fight Hype. I don't know if you guys caught that interview, but he was talking about, of course the questions are like, would you go fight blah 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 in boxing? What about Canelo and Jorge Masvidal? And one thing interesting Izzy said was like, Why would I go fight somebody in boxing when I'm a fighter? They should come to the octagon, to the cage, and prove themselves with all the weapons. Why would you take away my weapons and limit me in boxing and enter the boxing match when you could have all your weapons and enter into my arena and we could fight? You know what I mean? And he does make a good point about that, man. It's like you're kind of taking away a lot of your weapons and giving every boxer an advantage when you enter that ring against a boxer, right? It doesn't even matter what level they are. If you're at the highest level, you're crazy, right? And you saw that with Conor McGregor and Floyd. So, what do you think about that point? Like, should boxers, and this leads into Claressa Shields, right? She just signed with the PFL. So, with all that in mind, right? Claressa Shields, what are your initial thoughts on her signing with the PFL?
It surprised me, and then I'm more thinking about it. It didn't surprise me because I remember like earlier this year, I talked to her boxing promoter who said she's always talking about doing MMA. She wants to be that first two-sport, like combat sport champion, like a beatboxing MMA champion, the first ever. So PFL surprised me though, because I'm like, what's really in PFL other than a Kayla Harrison fight? And Kayla Harrison would take her down and beat her up in probably under a minute because that's what Kayla Harrison does to most girls. But I get it. Like she's going to be fighting non-tournament fights for the first year. I expect her to fight no one that good, probably just build up her record. But the thing is, like, she's only been a boxer since she was young. So how good can her ground game be? Like, if she fights someone half decent that can wrestle, I don't really think she's going to have a whole lot of success. I don't know why she'd leave because she's literally the best women's boxer in the world. So why would you enter a sport where you're now at the bottom of it?
Yeah, that is a weird signing, but I'm guaranteeing you PFL threw a lot of money at her, and it was just like you can't turn it down, man. You're a prize fighter, and I guarantee you she's a true prize fighter. So she's going where the money is. And that you bring up a good point about her and her ground game, because when you look at other like strikers that have transitioned, let's say Holly Holm, right? She was a boxer for a long time, but then she was a kickboxer, and then she trained at Jackson, so you know that she was doing jiu-jitsu, wrestling, whatever. So before she even got into the MMA game, she was well versed in many of the aspects, right? So she was successful when she came in. She beat Ronda Rousey, right? Biggest upset, one of the biggest upsets, in history. And then you got Izzy. He's a guy that was in kickboxing and transitioned over to MMA, but he was wrestling and grappling since back in the day, man, like a long time ago. Like when he was in the middle of his kickboxing career, he was doing it. So with those two examples, right, it's like, okay, there are strikers that have transitioned and done well, but for her, who is she working with their grappling? Like, does she have a coach that's specific with wrestling and jiu-jitsu and just MMA overall? Or is she just working with her boxing coaches to go into an MMA fight, which is going to be complete disaster? Tom, what kind of disaster would that be?
I mean, it would be the disaster of our time, man. That would be a complete embarrassment for her. But you got to think with the resources she has and the press that this move is getting, she's going to find herself, a real camp with real coaching staff. And, I think it's doable. I think she's 25, 26. Like, she's still young. She's in the prime of her athletic career. It's not like she's some 31-year-old boxer coming in and trying it. She has been working on the kicks and stuff. I remember it was earlier this year that she put that video out of her first kicks, and they weren't good, but, it was cool of her to show her very first kicks to her fans. That was pretty bold. She's had a lot of time since then. I'm sure her kicks and her elbows and her knees have gotten better. And, hopefully she's been working on her grappling a little bit too. And I think it can be done. You mentioned Holly Holm, who's kind of an interesting example. And then there's others like, Stamp Fairtex, Tenshin Nasukawa, who, of course, like, kickboxers and Muay Thai fighters who could kick and whatnot first. But, similar examples. I think she's young enough that if she really, applies herself to her training and has a good team around her, maybe not a future champion in the PFL, but certainly capable of some big wins, I think.
Yeah, it's just the matchups, because I believe it said that she was going to fight twice in 2021 in non-tournament fights. So the matchups will be crucial. Like, guaranteed she's going to fight some striker with no wrestling or anything. That is basically is going to be a boxing match with
do we know if she's
4-ounce gloves.
Is she allowed to box at all during the next
year?
Yeah,
she still is, which is what I don't get. So she said she still wants to box twice and do 2 MMA fights. So if you're doing 2 boxing fights, that means you're probably dedicating at least 6-7 months to just your boxing fight. So now how much of that year is actually spent to MMA on wrestling, jiu-jitsu? Because you're not doing wrestling and jiu-jitsu while you're training for a boxing fight, defending your titles, or at least I wouldn't think.
Yeah, and also like going back to Stamp Fairtex, she's a fighter that fought MMA, Muay Thai, and kickboxing, and because she didn't concentrate on one of those sports, she lost both her titles like back to back. Like she lost the Muay Thai title, then she lost her kickboxing title. Now she's like going back to MMA to try to pursue the belt in MMA. And I feel like she's much better at kickboxing and Muay Thai compared to MMA. But yeah, because of her just jumbling and juggling all these different aspects, it kind of the effects were very negative for her. She lost both her titles. So we'll see what happens with Claressa, man. I think that she has a lot of potential, but she does need to like just focus on one thing, not box and then go to MMA and then like do 2-week camp of wrestling over here and jiu-jitsu over there. I don't think that's gonna work. And then she'll run into somebody that nobody knows, right? That could wrestle and take her down, and then she can't get up. And what's gonna happen to all that hype? It's gonna be gone. Tom, are you hyped about her or not? Tell the truth.
I'm hyped, man. Like I said, the key point for me is her age. She's not an old boxer coming in like James Toney trying to do this. She's young enough that if she really takes a crack at it, I think it's possible that she'll make some waves. I'm hoping that her first few opponents will be, waitresses and bank tellers and, part-time fighters. Because I think if they throw her into, with an NCAA wrestler right off the bat, we all know how that's going to go. Even if this wrestler has the worst hands ever, they're still just going to take her down and suffocate her. But I think it's doable, as long as she's, as you guys have said, mixing her martial arts on a daily basis, not, 2-month boxing camp and then 2 months back to wrestling. She's got to be blending it all together and learning how it all works as one cohesive package,
Definitely. Well, I hope it works out for her, and I'm gonna watch the PFL because of her, to see how she does, and hopefully, she brings a lot of more eyes, because I feel like the PFL is struggling to just get any traction, like with viewership. Have you noticed that? Like sometimes I'll go on the streams and stuff, and not many people are watching the PFL. Especially on on the Facebook streams and all that. So have you guys heard anything about that? Because it seems like they have lots of money, man. They're giving out $1 million to each division. And what do you think are the prospects of the PFL moving forward? Especially they missed out on a whole year of nothing.
Well, Rory McDonald signed there, which I think is big. Fabricio Werdum signed there, which is, I think you have to have those people. But I think PFL needs that, they need to build people up, like what Bellator did. Like Bellator for a long time was just signing UFC guys. Then Bellator started building up like AJ McKee, who's now their biggest star. Like, yeah, PFL's got to start doing that, not just signing, because half their roster, let's be real, are just people that got cut from the UFC that are now fighting in PFL. So I think they need a mix of get some young guys in, but then you need those big names to attract the audience. So Rory McDonald, Fabricio Werdum, Michaela Harrison. But I'm interested to see. I was still shocked so many people signed with PFL this year, just because I didn't think they were gonna. I didn't even know if they were gonna go back in 2021, because it seemed like all their attendance, they're never selling out shows. Their viewership didn't seem that good, and then to take a whole year off, I was kind of worried about that. But if they keep going, it's obviously always good for fighters, because it's just another competitor for the UFC to bid for so they can up their purses.
I actually spoke to Peter Murray last week, and he had some interesting things to say about the upcoming year. This year obviously didn't go quite the way they planned, but I think the silver lining has been that it's given them a lot of time to sort of strategize and plan their execution for the new year. And certainly, we've seen them signing lots of fighters. That's part of it, part of the big plan for the big comeback. But they've got some cool things in the pipe. And I think, I don't know what their viewership situation is like, but they've got that ESPN deal. So I think that probably provided a pretty nice boost, just because people, UFC fans already have ESPN Plus. They know there's MMA there. I assume some of them have crossed over to the PFL and started watching those fights. I mean, there's got to be some crossover.
Yeah, I also spoke with Ray Seffel a few weeks back, and it seemed like PFL is digging deep into international expansion, like doing these tournaments with regional promotions. And I think that that's a great idea to bring in more international talent, man. I think that that's what they need to do. Of course, we got the pandemic going on, but I think there's certain countries where you could put on shows and bring and do these mini tournaments, and then whoever wins those tournaments goes to the playoffs or goes to the season, and it'll bring more eyes, man, and especially will bring more TV deals. I've been hearing that they're locking up a lot of TV deals in certain countries to like broadcast the PFL, on TV. So hopefully it's working out for them. I hope that, they hit the ground running next year because, man, this next year is going to determine a lot. I think there's a lot of things weighing heavy on PFL coming up. So, yeah, like I think like that $1 million though, a lot of fighters, they're very intrigued. On top of that, they get paid for every fight. So it's like, you're not just fighting towards a $1 million, you're getting paid and you're fighting towards $1 million, which is great. And some of these guys are getting paid really well for each fight. So as long as they're getting paid well, I'm all for the PFL, man, and them snatching up fighters from anywhere and building fighters. Like Cole said, building fighters is important. And Bellator has done a great job with that. There are a bunch of prospects and they're signing all these young like wrestlers straight out of college. And yeah, it's just, I think Bellator in the next 5 years is going to grow more than it did in the last 20, to be honest with you. Do you guys see that in Bellator?
Yeah, because for the Bellator, for like most of my friends, has always been just 40-year-old ex UFC fighters that are still trying to fight like that old Legends tour. Like it's kind of be so. I think it's going to be some growing pains. Like obviously, a lot of people aren't going to know the names, but I think 2-3 years down the line, I think you're going to know a lot of these fighters that they're signing now that are only like 3-0 as a pro. And what I like is Bellator signs people that are 0-0 as a pro that have huge like college background that they're just taking a gamble on. If like even 3 of those 20 they sign hit, like it's going to work out for them in the long run.
Yeah, you got to play the numbers, man, especially with free agency. And like going, talking about free agency and like Juicia Formiga, he got cut. Or did he get released or he got cut? One of those things, right? And then he was saying, I believe, that there was going to be 20 something more fighters. Have we heard anything? Have you guys heard anything about any of the other fighters that have been released by the UFC?
Not yet, I don't think. Cole, you?
No, I know Kyle Nelson's going back, which I was kind of surprised. Well, I talk to him all the time because he just lives like an hour north of me. So, but I was surprised because he was 1-3 in the UFC, and he said after he got knocked out to Billy Quarantillo, Dana White met him backstage and said, "You put on exciting fights, like we'll hit you up in a bit and try to re-sign you." So he said he's still getting tested by USADA. He doesn't have a contract, so I thought he'd be one of those guys that's getting cut. But I mean, the UFC. Last week's card, for example, I could have named like 10 people if they lost that were getting cut. So I think they just look at that card. Most of those losers are getting cut, unfortunately, because a lot of that card was people that were like 0-1 in the UFC. You're on a 2-fight losing streak. That if you're on a 2 or 3 fight losing streak, you're just an easy number for the UFC to get rid of.
Yeah, logistics too. Like if you're from a certain area, I guess, and you're on a losing streak, they might not want to resign you just because there's no point of even just having you fly over and, just logistics. It doesn't work out, especially in the pandemic. So during the pandemic, we'll see what happens, man. There's a lot of fighters out there that are getting signed, that are so young in their career in the UFC. And then there's fighters that are getting cut that just was about to get started. And now they got to go back to the regional scene and build themselves back up. So we'll see what happens with that. But I think like right now, even if you get released, you could get signed any day again, because it's just like they're grabbing people all the time. So either you decide to sign exclusive deals with Bellator or PFL or one of these or one championship, or you go back to the regional scene and fight, mid-level guys until the UFC decides like, okay, we need to give this guy another chance or this girl. Do you think Rachel Ostovich will get re-signed?
No, I think she's probably cut. And she even said all fight week, if I lose this, I'm cut. Like she probably knew. The UFC probably told her. What is she now? I think she's 4-6 now as a pro, because she was under 500 at that fight. I think she's on a 3-fight losing streak. I can't see and she's been finished, I think, in all her losses. Like Paige Van Zandt got her in the first round, which is kind of crazy. Is her last fight before this one on the weekend was the same card Cejudo knocked out Dillashaw, and that felt so long ago. But I can't see her sticking around anymore. At 4-6, I think the UFC has to have some sort of standards.
Tom, hear me out.
Lay it on
Rachel
me.
Ostovich versus Paige Van Zandt, BKFC main event.
Maybe, man. I don't know. I think their first fight was decisive enough that we don't need to see a rematch in any arena.
Come on, bare knuckle, like those two. I think that would draw a lot.
Yeah, it would. I don't know though. I don't know. I think we might see Rachel end up in Bellator or something like that. You know, she's Hawaiian. They've been trying to set up shop in Hawaii. You know, they have events there. She'd be a good person to get on the bill there to kind of draw some local fans. You know, she could end up any number of places, but BKFC doesn't strike me as the first choice for her. Then again, I didn't expect Paige Van Zandt to go there either, and here we are.
Here we are, man. And man, I don't know if I'm excited about it or just like I don't really care about it. I don't know because it's been so long since they announced that signing, and I don't even know when they're fighting. I think maybe February. I believe that she's gonna debut. So I guess when we get to February, I'll be more in tune with bare knuckle boxing. Now before we get into like some more you know, like UFC or Bellator or whatever, I wanted to get into the MMA, like the MMA media stuff. Like we usually talk a little bit about it. So, you know, usually we talk about it from the start, like at the beginning, but now we went off on Nico Price getting high. But with a media presence, you know what I mean? Like let's say in social media, for like a journalist or for like a reporter or whatever you want to call yourself. What do you think about that, Cole? You know, like have you put a lot of effort in, you know, since you started? Like how many years have you been doing this?
What, 3 now? Yeah, closing on 3, if not 3 now.
Okay, so 3 years now. Since the start, did you try to build a media presence, like social media wise, or did you not put too much effort into it and you focus more on like your work and whatever you're doing right now?
No, I tried to build a Twitter following. Like I engage with people. I think that's Instagram. My Instagram's more just like I just follow me and my friends. That has nothing to do with my work. It's mostly my Twitter. That's just where I put my work. I feel like it's really important if you're trying to be anything in this space, just because you have to know people. That's where people are going to notice you. That's where your work's going to get read. Like it's like I can get a lot more clicks just on articles just by posting on my own than just retweeting like another from the BJ Penn's page or whatever. But I think it's so important to engage with people. And then when I reach out to fighters, they can check it and they're like, oh, okay, like he's actually like legit and he's not just this random person just asking to do an interview with me. So I think it's important for that reason. And just like being part of the community. I think if you engage with a lot of people, they're going to be more willing to like share your work or like read your work and whatnot.
Definitely. So Tom, what about you? Have you spent a lot of time trying to build yours up?
I've gone through stints of like really trying to do that, but man, I'm lazy. You know, it's, you know, I'll get excited about it for a few weeks and really try to engage with people, and then I'll just sort of forget about it. And I read Twitter a lot, but I don't post that much. I mean, this is probably the worst thing for a journalist to say, but I don't feel like I have that many interesting opinions. You know, I interview people that are very interesting, but me, myself, I mean, I prefer to let the fighters do the talking. So sometimes when I'm on Twitter, I just kind of feel like I have nothing to say. But speaking of media presences, I think it's key to have something to say. You always have to kind of be engaging with fans and readers, like Cole said. You know, this is I was interviewing Tyler McGuire, the one championship fighter, last night. He called this what have you done for me lately sport? And that's certainly true for fighters. You know, if you haven't fought for a long time, people forget about you. Same goes for journalists. You know, if you're not regularly putting out content, regularly engaging with people, you kind of get swallowed up. You know, there's so many people trying to make it in this sport. So if you're not engaging on Twitter the way Cole does, he does an excellent job of that. James Lynch is a great example. You know, he's always on Twitter sharing his stuff. If you're not doing that, you can kind of just be forgotten. So I think it's really crucial. And, you know, I should probably ramp it up if I'm being serious and if I'm taking my career seriously.
Do you have Cole, do you have a strategy? Like every time you post, you post some work, right? Like let's say you put up an article or you upload a video interview. Do you have a strategy of how you, like the steps you take to kind of spread your work throughout social media, or do you just put it on Twitter and that's it?
Well, I just do Twitter, but then like I don't really tweet stuff back to back to back. Like I see a lot of people do that where they'll have like 4 articles published throughout the day, and then at one time they just publish all 4. I think you got to spread them out a little because it's so easy to just scroll through. It's like it. I think like it's so tough just because everyone plays it kind of differently. I think James Lynch, you look at his Twitter, I think that's kind of the go-to for a lot of people in MMA media is to look at him. But I think like even what I've learned from James is like sharing clips of my interviews because then that's going to drive it. Like I've never done that before until recently where he said like share like 30, 45-second little clips and then put your interview link in the clips and people can be like, oh, I want to hear more. Then I click that. Like just little stuff like that I think helps too.
Yeah, definitely the clips. I was doing that for a while, but now I've just went away from it because I've just juggling all these other things. So it's just I need to start doing clips. 2021, more clips from me. You remind me, Cole. I gotta do clips now. Now, the strategy, I'm gonna break it down like how I do it. And I don't know if it's working or not, but I just been doing it and it has helped me grow like on social media because I'm not really a big social media guy. I'm there for MMA and that's pretty much it. Like I try to stay away from commenting on like sometimes I write stuff and I'll be like, should I put this out? Because it's not even about MMA. And I'm just like, nah, I'm not gonna put that out there because there's no point. You know what I mean? Like nobody cares about my opinion on like Korean politics. It doesn't matter. Like
I do. I care.
You care. Well, like so like let me take you through my steps and then maybe you guys could interject and give me some advice, or maybe maybe I'm doing something wrong, right? So let's say I upload a video interview, right? And then right after I upload it, I usually wait until like East Coast time around like the mid afternoon, like around noon or whatever, which is kind of like late night here. I wait until then to post on Twitter, right? So I post on Twitter, and then after that, I'll post before that. I'll post on Facebook. So I'll post on like let's say SCMP's main page. I'll post on there, and then I'll share it on my page because I have another separate page of just like my MMA stuff. So I'll share it on there, and then I'll share it on my personal Facebook page, right? And I got like a few thousand followers on each one. So I'll share it there. Then after that, I'll go on Twitter and I'll share it on Twitter. And then after maybe a day later, I'll share it on my Instagram. Right. And that's kind of like the process I take for everything that I do. Any article, any interview, that's the process that I take. And I guess it's working, but, slowly, but not like, like it's like benefiting me tremendously. But I feel like that's a good process that you could take of sharing your work. I see a lot of guys that post their stuff in like groups, you know what I mean? Like there's like Facebook groups and there a lot of guys get views from that, you know what I mean? Of, like MMA groups or combat sports groups or whatever. And that's a good strategy. I don't do that personally myself, but I see a lot of guys doing that. So maybe you can do that. Now also, so what do you guys think? Like, am I doing too much? Should I not do that? Or what do you guys think? Or maybe you guys can do it. I don't know, man. Like, I don't know what is the standard for that, but I feel like you should cover all your bases, which is Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter.
No love for LinkedIn. Come on, man.
No, I just LinkedIn, man. Like, I don't do that. I have it, but I don't do it,
man. Yeah, it's useless.
Oh, it's terrible. No, but and then what I do too is for pay-per-views normally, because those are the ones where it capture a lot of casual, I'll not even just retweet, like I'll tweet again all my interviews for that card the day of the event, like the morning of, and just include the hashtag just in case people are searching it up. Because for like last week's fight night or this week's, like I probably won't do it because I can't see many casual viewers turning in. But like McGregor's card, I'll be doing that. Like the 256, I'll be doing that. Just like refreshing just in case people didn't see it and then they're trying to just read some stuff or watch some stuff before the fights. I think that's something to do too. But I really should use Facebook. I don't. I hate Facebook. Maybe that's something I should start getting into. But for me, it's just Twitter.
Yeah, Facebook, I don't even like on my phone, right? I have Instagram, but if they had Instagram Messenger separately, I would just download that app. And if they do, let me know. I don't know, but because I don't like if I had Instagram Messenger separate, then I would download that app, but I don't, so I have to have Instagram on my phone, and then I have Twitter on my phone. But if we could have Twitter Messenger separate on my phone, I would have that app. And I don't have Facebook because you could actually download Facebook Messenger onto your phone. because the only reason I have those on my phone is because of the messengers. Because you don't know where you're like contacting these fighters from. One of them is like they're on Facebook, the other one's on Instagram, the other one's on Twitter. Then some of them are on WhatsApp and WeChat, and like you have to have all those chats on your phone because you don't know when something is gonna come into you, right? So as someone in my position is trying to like set up all these interviews and stuff like that, and you guys same. So yeah, but social media wise, man, I try to stay off of it as much as possible. But you do get stuck, especially on like on like I get stuck on Instagram. And this, I'm gonna tell you the truth. Like I push that, that magnifying glass. And when you push that, all you see is like Instagram models. Why is like that's all you see? And then I push one and I'm just like, damn.
Sound too bad.
Like I just get stuck for like 5-10 minutes just going through all these like Instagram photos. And then I'm like, who are these people? And I just like shut off my phone. But
man, social media is so rough, it's so
yeah.
so addictive and so toxic, but it's also so crucial for the work that we do and for the work that so many people do now. I mean, you can hate it all you want, but you're really at a major disadvantage if you're not leveraging it properly. And that's just the nature of the beast, I think.
Yeah. So is there anything else we can do? Like I seen guys on YouTube, like Craig and like Fight Night Picks, they do a really good job over there on their YouTube page of the community that they created, right? That they get a lot of interaction, man. And I'm lazy with that. Like I don't do that at all. And I need to do it more. But
this person,
you could only do so much, man. Like let's say if you were able to get like a social media manager where they could just do everything for you, then life would be so much easier, right? Imagine like you work for a company that they had someone like that just did all the social media for you. Dude, I would never have to go on social media again. They would just be doing it for you. I would love that so much. Except for event days, I'll just go on Twitter and like race against people to get on ESPN. You know what I mean? It's become a race, I think, for a lot of people. Like they want to get on ESPN. Like me and Adam was talking about that last week. It's like Adam was talking about, he wasn't doing it to get on ESPN, and he's got on there a lot. And then I forgot to tell him, like, at first I was doing it to get on ESPN because I never tweeted during events.
Man, I think they blacklisted me. I think I talked too much shit about the UFC or something because I put some good tweets out during broadcasts. I know, man. I know under ordinary circumstances that tweet would make it on, but they don't put it up. And I'm like, I know they're seeing this. I must have said something a while back that really pissed them off, but
could be,
or
man.
Maybe my tweets are just bad. I don't know.
I think I've only been on like twice, and the first time I was on, I didn't reply to anyone. I tweeted, and I didn't even include the hashtag, and I don't know how it got on because I'm like, I'm not that big of a like. I don't have that many followers. I don't know how this one got on. And then I sent some good tweets with some hashtags. Don't get on. And I'm just like, this is dumb. And then I stopped tweeting about it.
Yeah, it's just there's no logic and there's no system. Man. I just think like, like I'm gonna be honest. I was tweeting in the beginning when they first started. I was like, I need to get on the broadcast. Like I was like, I was on it. But then when I got on, I was like, okay, it's cool. And then I just continued doing it just to do it. And then I just got on it. I don't even know how many times I've been on the broadcast.
Just rubbing it in, man.
Yeah, I'm rubbing it in. But I'm just saying, like, there's no system. Like, I don't know who chooses it.
That's a totally natural thing to want, man. You're a journalist, but you are a fight fan too. It's cool to see something, your thoughts and your name on a UFC broadcast. I think that's
also fair. Growing your social media too.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like being on those broadcasts, and I noticed it because fighters will tell me like, "Oh, I seen you on the broadcast." I'm just like, and then just random people message me like, "Oh, I seen you on the broadcast." I'm like, okay, but some of the things are stupid. Like what I wrote, it wasn't like good tweets. It was just, I don't know what I wrote, but sometimes it just backfires. Like Shogun tweet I got on the broadcast backfired because I said Shogun is so much better in his rematches, and it's kind of true if you look at it historically. Yeah. But this one, he just got mauled, dude. Like it just got smashed. I'm like the Grim Reaper of rematches or tweets. But anyways, now should we get to some? Is there any questions here?
Yeah, there have been a few, but we've kind of breezed past what they were about. There was a question about the PFL format. John, there was a question about your interviews in Korean. Any of that?
Yeah.
Stuff you want to...
Let me see. This one?
Yeah.
John, have you considered doing a few interviews in Korean for the Korean domestic audience? Well, I've thought about it, but then at the same time, there's a bunch of domestic journalists. The one I know a bunch of them, and they're doing it. So there's no point of me doing it because they're doing it already. The best thing I can do is to bring on the translators and do it in English, because a lot of the people, or most of the people, are not going to go and watch those interviews in Korean because there's no subtitles, there's nothing, so they're not going to understand what's going on. So I'm just trying to get more and more Korean fighters as much as possible, even Chinese fighters too. And but yeah, I'm not going to be doing domestic interviews unless someone comes and like offers me money to do it because I need to get paid. Then I'll do it. But like most of the time I'm not getting paid that much, and most of the time I'm not getting paid at all to interview the Korean fighters because nobody really cares about the Korean fighters, half of them. So I'm doing my Good Samaritan deed every time I do that. So there you go.
There's another question from our guy CP a lot here, circling back to the PFL. If you want to take a stab at that, Cole.
Yeah. Do you think the regular season and tourney are necessary to put them apart from the competition, or you think PFL should go with a more traditional format?
I think they need the tournament. That's how they stick out, is the tournament. If you just do the traditional format, they're going to be probably in North America, they'd be the C promotion, like Bellator, UFC would be ahead of them. Worldwide, I'd probably say one is ahead of them. Risen probably equal to what PFL is, if not more. So like they'd really fall behind, I think, without the tournament. I think the tournament is what brings in more viewers, because then, especially that $1 million payday at the end. So then you kind of just watch the whole season. My only issue with the PFL is, why are they doing their finals on New Year's Eve? I would watch every single PFL event. I will never watch a New Year's Eve event because probably most people, I don't think, are staying in on a New Year's Eve to watch the PFL finals. Do it December 30th. I'd stay in. I don't like their event ends at like 11:30. So, okay, you can try to rush out in 30 minutes and get somewhere when everything's already full. Like this year would have been perfect to do New Year's Eve because everyone's staying in. But that's my only complaint with PFL. If I could change one thing,
I think that they should do the finals on the day after Christmas. I think that would be a perfect day to do it because everybody will be home.
Yeah,
the day after Christmas. Yeah, hungover, and they're just like, "What's on TV?"
Yeah.
Oh, PFL. Let's watch some face punching, right? Like, I think that you're right. No one's gonna. No one wants to watch any. I don't think sports is something that's on people's minds on New Year's Eve. It's more people just like either they're with their family, or they're out to get just plastered, and then go home with somebody. Right? They're not looking to watch the PFL. Even the UFC realized that after a while. Like, these new, end of the year events, or New Year's Eve events is not going to work out. But at the same time, Ryzen is doing New Year's Eve events, and they've been very successful, right? But I feel like this is a different demographic. Like you got the North American crowd versus like the Japanese or the Asian market, and I think it works for the Asian market, but not for the North American market. So
you got to think the New Year's Eve show for the PFL is going to be even rougher in the COVID era. Hopefully we're well out of that by New Year's Eve 2021. But if we can't have fans in the building, you might be able to pack an arena on New Year's Eve. A bunch of fight fans coming out to get rowdy on New Year's Eve. You could do something at midnight, right before the main event or something, ring in the new year, and then have a big fight. But if you can't, if people aren't buying tickets, and you're not having a lot of people watching because people are out doing other things, I'm totally with you, Cole. I mean, you got to pick a different night, man. That's not the night to do it.
Well, I know, even January 1st, like even if your season goes into the next year, no one does anything January 1st. Everyone's hungover. Like no one's going out again during January 1st. Like do it that day, or if you want the same year, Boxing Day works, December 30th, literally any other day but New Year's Eve.
Yeah, you're right, man. They need to listen to our chat right there, the last about 5 minutes of what we've been talking about.
They might be, man.
Come on, watch it. PFL. Come on.
Better yet, hire us.
Yeah, hire us to just figure out the time where you should have
creative
shows.
Consultants.
Exactly. Now let's get into two other talking points, from the past couple of days. The first one is the Korean Zombie calling for Zabit in his next fight. I'm gonna jump right in there and tell you that is blasphemous. Like, why would Zabit take a fight against a Korean Zombie? That makes no sense for Zabit. Zabit is on the verge of a title shot, and the Korean Zombie just got smashed for 5 rounds, right? This is the truth, right? I'm Korean, and I love the Korean Zombie, but I'm telling you the truth, right? Like, he got smashed for 5 rounds. That was like not even a competition, and he's gonna come out and he wants to fight Zabit. I know you got to reach for the stars, but man, come on, let's be realistic. Like, Zabit is not gonna fight you. Zabit thinks he deserves a title shot. Why would he take a fight against a guy coming off a loss, right? Makes no sense. Cole, does it make sense to you? Does it make sense that the Korean Zombie should fight Zabit next, or who do you feel like the Zombie should fight next if he's gonna step back in there in like the summer, I believe?
Well, I think it makes sense because Zabit needs to get a fight. The guy hasn't fought since he beat Calvin Kattar last November, and after that fight, all the talk was, oh, if Zabit took the 5 rounds, he would have lost that fight. That was the entire storyline after that, was Zabit lost the second half of the second round, lost the third round. Everyone was saying if that's 5 rounds, Calvin Kattar goes out and beats Zabit, and he hasn't fought since. He's been tied up with Yair Rodriguez, and Dana White, that weird thing where he's like, oh, have we told him about Yair? Oh, okay, well, he's not going to fight for a while. Like, if you said that, why would you say why he's out? But so he has to move on from me, Yair. Yair's not going to happen. Like, featherweight division, Holloway's locked up with Kattar. Ortega is probably fighting Volkanovski. So then after that, who's he going to fight? Kattar at 6 is tied up. Emmett at 7 is injured. Arnold Allen at 8. What would you rather have, Korean Zombie or Arnold Allen, next available guy? Like, for Zabit, he just needs to get a fight, and that's the highest ranked guy that's available right now.
I don't know. I don't think Zabit will take that fight. He does need to fight, but I could see Zabit just chilling out and waiting to slide in somewhere against one of the other guys, like let's say against Holloway or even the Kattar rematch. That's more beneficial for him, for his status in the division, than fighting the Korean Zombie, because the Korean Zombie is a stylistically, it's not like the best matchup for Zabit. I mean, Zabit is taking some chances against the Korean Zombie. So it's hard to say, but I like the strategy of the call out. But to be honest with you, I was talking to Gilbert Burns about this, and he told me, like, when you call somebody out, it shouldn't just make sense to you. You should also make sense to the fighter you're calling out. You got to think both ways. And I guess put the foot in the other shoe, or whatever you want to call it. And if it doesn't make sense like that, then you do the call out. And that's what Gilbert Burns was telling me. Like, that's how he done every call out that he's done, is he's like thought of it as, will it benefit me, but also benefit the other guy if he takes the fight, and look at it from both positions. And I feel like if you look at it like that, it doesn't make sense for the Zabit to take the Korean Zombie. It's just too much of a chance. And Zabit, man, what do you do with him? Do you put him in? Do you force him to fight the Korean Zombie? But then the Korean Zombie is not going to be back until April, June, or something like that. So he has to wait much longer. What do you think, Tom?
I kind of agree with both of you. Cole, I think you summed it up really well. Right now, Zabit doesn't really have any better options, unless he plans on waiting around for a while. I think the Korean Zombie is the best choice at the moment. Other side of the coin is that it doesn't really make a ton of sense for him. You don't want to, you never want to say somebody like the Korean Zombie as a backstep, but, looking at the rankings and recent wins, losses and stuff, it does kind of feel that way. And then, on the flip side, it's just a fun fight. It makes sense for that reason. I mean, there's no way that would be a bad fight if you just take rankings out of it. Sure, it doesn't make a ton of sense from a ranking standpoint, but a lot of things in this sport don't make sense. We were just talking about the Nevada Commission busting guys for smoking pot and, no longer disclosing purses. We're dealing with stuff that doesn't make sense almost every day in this sport. This is one of those things that doesn't make sense, but would probably be really fun. So I'm for the matchup, and I think it's probably a really good way for Zabit to kind of, recapture the imagination and the enthusiasm of the fans. He's been out for a while, and it's certainly, a good move for the Korean Zombie. He should take it, obviously, but I think it's, the best option available for Zabit right now.
Who's the A side, Cole? Is it Zabit or the Korean Zombie?
That's actually close. I think Zabit's lost a lot of hype lately because the guy hasn't fought since November, and I think even personally, just my friend group, I have so many friends that just became UFC fans starting in May when they came back, and they don't know who Zabit is because they've never seen this guy fight. At least they saw Korean Zombie fight. He didn't look good, but at least they seen him fight. Like, I feel like that's probably a case for a lot of people. Is the UFC was the first sport back. There was literally nothing on TV. People just started tuning in to watch it. Like, I still think Zabit's probably the A side just because of that. But I think for Zabit's next fight, regardless of who it is, it has to be 5 rounds. Like, Volkanovski's brought this up to me before. He's like, this guy, like, he doesn't deserve a title shot till he goes 5 rounds, or at least trains for a 5-round fight, because that's been a knock on him, is his cardio. Can he go 5 rounds? Like, he has to fight 5 rounds for the title. So I think regardless of who opponent, I think he has to headline. It has to be 5 rounds.
Does he though? Like Peter Yan didn't fight 5 rounds before he got a title.
But that's been a lot of the talk, is people are calling him the paper champ. Like Aljamain Sterling keeps saying that. Like if Zabit goes out there and does that, and he fought for a vacant title too against an 0-2 guy and Jose Aldo that was 0-1 in the division, which made no sense. But I think Zabit has to fight 5 rounds personally. I think you have to have at least one 5-round fight before you get a title shot.
Well, there is a lot of talks swirling around Zabit and him being able to go 5 rounds, but at the end of the day, he did beat Calvin Kattar. You could say all you want that if he had 2 more rounds, he would have won the fight, and that could be true, but really there wasn't 2 more rounds, so Zabit won the fight, right? And I love Calvin Kattar. I love the matchup with him against Max Holloway, and I look at that as like the UFC rewarding Calvin Kattar for taking those fights, during the pandemic, and he went 5 rounds with Dan Ige, and he didn't have to take that fight. He could have just been like Zabit and hold out, and I want somebody ranked higher. But Calvin Kattar is a fighter, man, and I feel like they should have just made the Zabit versus Calvin Kattar rematch a 5-rounder. They should have done that, to be honest with you, and then we would have really seen like what could really happen in that fight if it was 5 rounds. But the Max Holloway, you can't pass that up. He's a former champ, and a lot of people believe he's one of the best ever at featherweight. So, yeah, you got to take that. But Zabit, man, he might end up sitting out for the next year. Who knows, man? We might even just forget about Zabit, and then he'll just appear one day and fight, some random like Clay Guida or something like that. I don't know. But with the zombie, right? He calls out Zabit, and I like that and everything, but the thing is, like, he can't fight right now. If he was able to fight like next month or beginning of 2021, then I could understand that call out and be like, okay, this dude is ready to fight and he's ready to come back as soon as possible and he's ready to take on Zabit. But he's not. He's saying that he's gonna wait until April, May, June, or like you can't. Like that's why I asked you, Cole, who's the A side? If the A side is the Korean Zombie, then he could do that. He could be like, all right, like wait until May, June, or July, and we'll have that fight with Zabit. But I don't know, man. I feel like the UFC is gonna force these guys to fight somebody that they want them to fight, rather than the fighters making the choice. So we'll see what happens. But looking at the rankings, Cole's right. Zabit and the Korean Zombie makes the most sense because what is it, Kattar and Holloway, and it looks like Ortega is gonna fight Volkanovski. Has there been any kind of word on that fight? Like when is, I heard from a little bird that it is going to happen in the first 3 months of 2021.
I heard the same thing.
Yeah. I think March, because January pay-per-view is Fight Island.
Yeah.
The UFC will never put another champion on a McGregor pay-per-view card now because they're not handing out pay-per-view points because everyone's buying pay-per-view from McGregor. February, I assume it's probably going to be back in Vegas because I don't think they're going to do 2 straight months pay-per-views. They might. I wouldn't be surprised if they go back in March and it's that date because what's February now? February has a lot of Americans. It's like Uriah Hall. Sean O'Malley said he's come back February. I talked to Sean O'Malley so many times. He said if he got in Abu Dhabi, he wouldn't sign the contract. So I think that's a pretty good case. It's in Vegas. So I think it's probably because maybe Volkanovski does go to Vegas because we've seen Dan Hooker go to Vegas. We saw people go to Vegas. Maybe it does happen in Vegas, but I think it's first 3 months. So I think it's probably March.
Yeah, definitely.
But do you think that could headline a pay-per-view, or do you think that has to be a co-main to something else?
That has to be a co-main to something else, man. I don't feel like, if Ortega was the champ, I feel like that would be a different talk. That would be a different discussion because Ortega does have a pretty decent following, right? Like overall, worldwide. Like I was in China at Shenzhen, UFC Shenzhen, when Zhang Weili won the title, and during the fighter Q&As, people were asking questions about Brian Ortega. Like women were coming up asking questions about Brian Ortega, and Brian Ortega wasn't even there.
Just women? That's very surprising. I wonder why that
Yeah,
is.
and it's like, where's Brian Ortega? That's what I think. No, you know why? Claudia Gadelha was there, and she was doing the Q&A,
Mhm.
and she's asking, they're asking
Right,
her
right.
about Brian Ortega. So I guess there's a connection there. But anyways, yeah, I don't see it headlining, but you never know, man. You never know. You know what I see? I see Izzy versus Jan
I was
Blachowicz
about to say
in the
that.
main event, and then I see Volkanovski versus Ortega in the co-main, and that
Perfect.
is a sick ass pay-per-view right there.
Or if you could have him headline, you could do like Zhang Weili, Rose Namajunas. I think you have to have another title fight if that's the main event. Like you have to have another title fight or another big fight underneath them.
Yeah, Zhang Weili. I feel like Zhang Weili could headline a pay-per-view. I feel like they would push her to do that.
Mhm.
Her versus Rose, and then Volkanovski versus Ortega underneath that. And if you flip it, I don't know. It's hard for me because I think Zhang Weili, she's actually becoming much bigger, and there's another like her. She hasn't fought in so long that she's starting to lose steam. To be honest with you, they need to book her in the next
Definitely.
3 months, right? They got to, because she's starting to fade away, and Rose doesn't need to do anything because she's the challenger, so she just got to go in there and beat her.
I think the intention of putting Weili on that what was it that card in March? I can't remember what number it was. Where Izzy fought Yoel. I think that was kind of the objective, because that card was getting a good amount of buzz because of the main event and stuff. Put Weili in there with a former champion, and I think the hope was that she'd start to catch on after that. But then, like you said, John, she hasn't fought since, and people forget so fast in this sport because there's so much content all the time, right? And there's so many amazing things happening all the time. You can forget about an amazing fight like she had in March so quickly. So she needs to fight again soon, but she can definitely become a really big star for the UFC, I think, especially now that she's learning English too.
Yeah.
She can catch on in North America. That's important. It is.
Yeah, it is. It's very important to know English.
That was a big reason why I don't think Aldo was as big as he could have been, was because I don't think a lot of North American people, especially Americans, they don't like listening to a question being asked and a translator answering it. I don't think that's why Jose Aldo was as big as he could have been. Like he had the fighting skills to be a massive star, but him just not speaking English, I think, really hurt his stock. But that's something that I think so good about Weili Zhang is her learning English. Even if she just hold the conversation, like answer very basic questions, I think it's going to do a lot for her in the long run.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, look at Khabib. Khabib, man, when he first came to the UFC, he didn't speak much English, man, and then eventually he learned and improved, and we got some straight gems out of him, man. Some of the stuff that he has said has resonated through, what is it, send me location, like stuff like that, you can't
Number
even
one
make
bullshit.
that up, man. Yeah, number one bullshit. Yeah, like that creates so much momentum. Those like clips that get shared. And you're right, Cole. Jose Aldo, I think that's why a lot of people argue that he's not the best featherweight ever in the UFC or just in the history of the division, is because he didn't become this like star outside of the UFC. And if he did speak English, I guarantee you he could have. Because I look at Jose Aldo and I could see him, like, if he spoke English, him talking like some like assassin, like killer from the favelas, you know what I mean? And then just saying some like sadistic stuff to his opponents. But because he doesn't speak English, we don't get to hear none of that. So yeah, you're right. Even Anderson Silva, man, even though he was a massive star, if he spoke English during his heyday, I think it would have been a different story, man. Especially against like someone like Vitor Belfort when they fought each other, and Chael Sonnen, you know what I mean? If they would have actually been able to go back and forth, I think it would have been like 10 times more massive than it was. But
that fight was such a funny example because people remember those two fights between Chael and Anderson, and they remember the trash talk and stuff, but it was such a weird situation because it was really just Chael trash talking Anderson Silva, and Anderson didn't know what he was saying. Like he wasn't offended. It wasn't getting under his skin because he had no idea what the guy was saying.
I think Anderson knew what he was saying, though.
He probably got the gist, and I'm sure he was getting it translated and stuff. But it's not like Chael was just roasting him right there in front of the world, and he was getting it all and getting his feelings hurt. It was that was a weird one.
Yeah, if you go to MMA Fighting, if you go to their YouTube page, they have like a video. It's like 40 minutes long of just Chael, just Chael interviews and just Chael talking at press conferences, and it's one of the funniest things you'll ever watch, man. He like, so he never cursed, and he kind of kept it PC somewhat, but man, it just, the stuff that he was saying was just hilarious, man. Just is, I don't know. There will never be no one like him. you could try.
He
But
changed the game, man. I don't think we'd
Yeah.
see, Conor McGregor gets a lot of credit for the trash talk, and he certainly was a big part of it. But I don't think any of these guys would have caught on the way they did if Chael hadn't really paved the way. And there were guys, like Tito before him and stuff. But I mean, Tito's a dullard. Let's be real. That guy can barely speak. Chael was articulate. He could really, rip into people and stuff. He was fantastic.
The best line was him to Tito about his ex-wife or whatever. That's still one of the best trash talk lines ever.
Yeah, yeah, you're right. When they went head to head in Bellator, like trash talk, you already knew who was the pro and who was the schmo, right? It was like you already knew. Like Chael was just like 10 yards, 15, 20 yards ahead of whatever Tito was saying. Tito was just angry. Like he was legit, like just pissed off.
Do you remember when he crushed the juice box on? I mean, what was that?
I don't know.
I still don't understand what the symbolism was there. It was just
because he was on steroids.
I guess
Chael was on steroids, or he was on juice.
But then Tito ended up looking like the Joker because he's covered in juice.
Yeah.
He screwed himself over there. It was weird.
There must be straight up imbeciles living where he lives to vote for Tito to control anything in that area.
I know
Tito, like he was a good fighter, but man, like some of the stuff that he says just doesn't make any sense, and it sucks for the people that are in his county or whatever, or city or wherever he's representing. Oh, I can't, but I'm there. I'm here to watch what unfolds, even though I don't even like to watch politics at all. But I'm here for him. Now,
look at this comment.
What is Tito is basically 100%. Yeah.
I guess.
Luke, you're right, man. He is.
Well said, Luke.
Yeah, he's like a Krispy Kreme donut, right? Just there. Now, the other big thing that came up recently is another COVID tragedy, which is not a tragedy. That's the wrong word. Another COVID cancellation, right? With remember, I think earlier in the week they said Khamzat was tested positive, and then some people said it was true, some people said it wasn't, and then later on we found out Leon Edwards tested positive, and then they had to cancel the show, right? Or not the show, but they had to cancel the fight, right? And the card is stacked, so even if they canceled that fight, it's still a good card, right? And I was looking forward to watching Leon fight Khamzat. But with this, should they have replaced Leon Edwards, do you think, Cole?
I think you could have, what got me so mad was Dana White's been like, oh, no one wants to fight this guy. You have had literally Ian Heinisch, who I've talked to a bunch of times, saying scrap me from this fight when he's supposed to fight Brendan Allen. I'll go take this guy on. Neil Magny has been so vocal about I'll fight this guy, but they probably not needle movers enough. So Dana White's like, no one wants to fight him. But even Neil Magny, when the news came out, he tweeted, he's like, 2-week notice main event, put me in. That's the guy Khamzat Chimaev should be fighting. The guy is 1-0 at welterweight and has 1 wins over Reese McKee, who's now 0-2 in the UFC. And so Alex Morano just beat him. So should Morano go now fight Colby Covington now because he just beat Reese McKee? I would have had no problem if he fought a top 10 guy if it was at middleweight. Because Gerald Meerschaert to me is a guy that's probably 20 to 25 in that middleweight rank. Because I don't know if maybe that's higher than what you guys think, but I think he's probably in that. I don't think he's close to the top 15, but he's beating him. That was impressive. If you were to give him a top 10 guy middleweight, I had no problem. But welterweight, his only win was Reese McKee. And to fight the number 3 guy I didn't agree with that. I thought that was the perfect opportunity to replace Neil Magny, who he should have been fighting in the first place. A guy that's been in the top 10, almost has the most wins at welterweight. If you beat Neil Magny, then yeah, sure, you can fight a Leon Edwards or someone in the top 5.
Yeah, it's very confusing. Like you said, Gerald, he was the big test for Khamzat, and he went in there and starched him with 1 punch, and it showed you that he does deserve a guy at middleweight. I've been saying that the whole time. If he was ranked in the middleweight division, I would kind of understand that if he was 15 there, but I don't understand why he's number 15 in the welterweight division. Like you said, he beat Reese McKee, who's 0-2, and Alex Morano. Actually, he's getting a big fight off the win with Reese McKee. He's fighting Anthony Pettis, so that works out for him, right? So I guess everybody needs to start fighting Reese McKee.
Which Morano's so weird because I talk to him all the time, and he literally told me, he's like, I think I'm getting 1 more in, and it's a really weird fight. I'm like, oh, okay, like I can't wait to see it. And then literally like 2 days later, it's like Anthony Pettis. I'm like, oh, congrats on that fight. I didn't see that one coming. He's like, yeah, I actually had to call safe to make sure this was actually true. It's not some fake thing they were sending me.
Yeah, speaking of fake, man, like there's so many fake news, man, at MMA. Like these guys are trying to like be these like breaking news, and then the crazy part is all these people are retweeting it. Like when Khamzat tested positive for COVID, right? Like was that from some like random account?
It was from
right?
some like Swedish outlet, so everyone believed it because Hamzat from Sweden. So everyone's like, oh, that's probably true. And then no one followed up. And then like 2 days later, it's like, oh, Leon Edwards has and the fight's canceled.
I think it's reasonable that Khamzat had COVID too. You know, I mean,
Yeah.
like, everybody's getting COVID these days. I mean, I don't want to sound like Dana White, but that's the whole risk of this disease. Is it's so transmissible, it's so contagious. There's a good chance that he had it, you know, and he did test positive, perhaps a little earlier on, and is now clear. And then just by bad luck, Leon happened to get it, you know, right after. That's totally plausible, I think.
Leon has had the worst year as a fighter, the worst year this year, just beginning to end. It just has been just a shit show for him, man. And it seems like the UFC is not really backing him, man, because they forced his hand to take the Khamzat fight. And when you see Leon and when you see interviews and when you talk to him, he's a very nice guy. You know what I mean? Like he seems like he'll fight anybody, but then at the same time, he wants fights that he deserves. And yeah, he's just not getting that. And I think that they should just they shouldn't even rebook this fight. They should just let Leon fight somebody else. You know what I mean? Like just rebook different opponents, but they're not going to do that because Dana White, he's in love with Khamzat, and a lot of people are in love with Khamzat, which is crazy to me. Like I'm a guy that's not a hype train guy, and I'm not on the hype train right now. But man, he needs to go in there and fight some more guys to like just get this push that they're giving him, because there's a lot of guys in the UFC that have been around for many, many years and beat top guys that still don't get that push. So I don't understand this pushing one guy more than the other. It confuses me with Khamzat. Now, when should they rebook this fight? Like, what would be the perfect? Should they do it on the co-main of Max Holloway versus what's his name? Calvin Kattar? Do you think that's a good option?
Well, I saw Derek Lewis today said he got told that's when they're going to rebook Blades, which makes it. I honestly would like to see Khamzat go 5 rounds against Leon. I think that's a main event fight. So personally, like, I don't know if you guys saw, but like Brett said, like he talked to Leon and he was lost. Like, what was it? A lot of weight, and he was feeling like so bad. Why are you even going to rush this guy in a month? Like, even if this fight doesn't happen until like March, do people really care? Like, that's what I get with even with like Kevin Holland. The guy's COVID, he's out of this fight week, and then they're like, "Oh, but you're gonna fight 7 days later against Jacare." Like, how's he supposed? Because when you
that
get
fight's
it,
gonna get canceled too.
Oh, when you get it, you're supposed to quarantine. So what's he doing? Training by himself in quarantine and not only quarantine for 7 days when it's supposed to be like 14. Like I don't. The UFC just tries to rush everything. Right when someone gets COVID, they're like, 2 weeks later, you're good to go.
Yeah, that is weird. You do need to quarantine for 2 weeks. So how are you supposed to fight a week later? That doesn't make any sense, man. Like, and then Jacare's team, they had COVID, right? They were one of the first ones to
like after the weigh-ins against Uriah Hall. Because I remember I was texting him in safe, and that was like because everyone was like, "Oh, why was Souza so far away? Like he's wearing gloves and mask." The entire fight week, wasn't talking to anyone, and then literally the night before the first event back, he tests positive. It's like, there goes sports again for another 2 months.
Yeah, everybody was like on needles right there, right? With the Jacare thing, and then Uriah Hall comes back and fights Anderson Silva, and now Anderson Silva has been. Oh, let's get into Anderson Silva, dude. Like I haven't talked to anybody about this, but Anderson Silva, he doesn't express any interest in fighting for anybody, but all these guys are turning him down. Like, does that make any sense to you, Cole?
No, but I think part of it is I don't really want to see Anderson Silva fight again. Like the thing is, Anderson Silva could have been easily one of the greatest. If he retired after Rich Franklin, he's top 3, if not the best ever. People don't even have him as their like top 5, top 10 anymore, just because of this latest run where at 45 years old, I think it's time where or with the UFC really didn't do him any favors. Like, he was still fighting top 5 guys when he shouldn't have been. Like, his last 3 fights, what were they? Adesanya, Cannonier, Uriah Hall. Like, he should have had no business fighting Adesanya or Cannonier. But a lot of these promotions, I think, too, is the money, where they're not going to pay Anderson Silva what he's probably paying the UFC, because I imagine he was getting paid a shit ton, and I can't see him wanting to take a pay cut.
Yeah, I heard he was making like millions a fight. This is just what I heard. So, and I heard some guys at Bellator are making just as much per fight. And yeah, like you could tell, like with Bellator, when they were talking about they're not interested in Anderson Silva, and their focus is on building their prospects and stuff like that. And I like that. If your logic is that, then I understand like not having interest in Anderson Silva. But I think some of these promotions are playing mind games with each other, like saying like, "Oh, we don't interested in Anderson Silva," and they're like, "Oh, we're not interested now." But at the same time, they're like, "We're interested in Anderson Silva," and they're talking to his manager, right? So I don't know. I like it because it shows you competition in MMA, right? Which we don't see much, with amongst promotions and in between and for free agents or whatever you want to call it, or fighters that are not contracted exclusively. So it's good to see that. It'll be interesting, but I feel like Anderson Silva is going to sign with someone. It's going to be one of the promotions that said like, "Oh, we're not interested," and they're going to sign with someone. But at the same time, I can see him going to boxing and fighting for like Thriller.
That was my pick. Legends Only League, him versus Roy Jones Jr. They've talked about that for like 7 years now of having that boxing fight. I mean, Roy Jones Jr. did not look like, I don't think he looked good at all against Mike Tyson. I thought he lost 7 rounds. Anderson Silva hasn't looked that good. I think that's a fight that is a winnable fight for Anderson Silva. It's a winnable fight for both of them.
Yeah, I like that fight. I think that could be actually a pro fight, not no exhibition, and they could go full hardcore. I feel like they could do the works with that fight. They could do those countdowns, and they could do everything to promote it and make it a big event, and have Jake Paul fight on the on the co-main event against Dylan Dennis. Dylan Dennis needs to fight Jake Paul. Come on, Dylan Dennis talks so much trash.
If Jake Paul boxes Dylan Dennis, am I crazy that I'd pick Jake Paul to win? I don't think Dylan Dennis is striking as any and then Ben Askren's coming out and saying, "Oh, I'll box to." I think Jake Paul would beat Ben Askren too in a boxing match.
Yeah,
I'm with you, man.
Yeah, I think if I had money, I'd go with Jake Paul.
Jake
Paul really showed something in that fight.
If it's an MMA fight, I'm taking both Dylan Dennis and Ben Askren over Jake Paul. But straight boxing, I'm taking Jake Paul over both of them.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, Jake Paul, like him and his brother, man, they just they have like this audience, man, and they're just bringing it everywhere they go. So it benefits, and everybody just sees dollar signs, so they want them to be part of their show no matter what. But yeah, I like the way that he's doing it. He's calling out Dylan Dennis, and it'll be funny to see him fight Dylan Dennis, because Dylan Dennis talks so much trash to everybody online, and sometimes I think it's not even him. I think it's just somebody doing it for him. But yeah, he never fights either. When's the last time you saw Dylan Dennis fight? Who did he fight?
He has the same record as Jake Paul. Dylan Dennis is 2-0 in MMA, and Jake Paul's 2-0 as a boxer. Like, I would wonder if Scott Coker would do that. Like, I feel like Scott Coker would deny it, because if Dylan Dennis loses, like, as much as Dylan Dennis doesn't fight, he's such a big star for Bellator because of his ties with McGregor, because of his trash talk. If he goes out and gets knocked out by like a YouTuber, his whole star power is gone.
Yeah, it's
done. What? If I can interject here, I don't know that, I know Jake Paul's been calling out Dylan Dennis, and Dylan Dennis is a big name in the MMA bubble because of the connection to Conor. I don't think he's a big enough name for Jake Paul anymore after last weekend. I think, I don't want to suggest for a second that Jake Paul is going to get the Conor McGregor fight, but I think he needs like marquee mainstream celebrities to fight, other athletes from other sports, maybe a big name from hockey, somebody like Evander Kane or something like that. I don't think Dylan Dennis is enough of a he just doesn't grab headlines the way a lot of these other guys might, so I don't really think that fight will happen.
I know he called out that guy that beat Logan Paul, like his brother, in the boxing match. Yeah. Like, that one, you could sell that one like, "Oh, I'm avenging my brother," but like, I even feel like he has to fight someone notable. Like, everyone's coming in now to see either Jake. He's at that point where people are watching him to get a highlight reel knockout, or people hate him that they want to see him get knocked out.
And the fact is, he did look reasonable in that fight. You know, the rematch with the other YouTube guy that fought his brother. You know, that's compelling. The storyline is reasonable, but we've seen now that Jake Paul is, you know, he's not a world-class boxer, but we know he's going to win that fight if he takes it, right? So you got to find him somebody that's a big enough name, and B, you know, a credible test. You can't just have him fight like another social media guy. You know, it's going to be tricky for him to find his next opponent. I think they got to tick all these boxes, you know?
Well, maybe he could fight like 3 midgets or something. Like
He's a big guy.
Fight circus.
That's what people forget.
Yeah,
You know, he's talking about
fight
fighting
circus.
Connor.
He weighed in 189.
Yeah, and
That's
he's
big.
ripped, man.
Like 189, he had to cut down because that was the highest Nate Robinson would go. Like I wouldn't be surprised if this guy walks around like 220, 230. Like Conor McGregor is not going up to 189.
No.
Yeah, it's like fighting a light heavyweight, man, or a middleweight. He's not gonna do that.
I even got a better fight. Anderson Silva versus Jake Paul.
Oh man, that just makes me sad.
Do you know?
And then Jake Paul, what if Jake Paul goes in there and knocks out Anderson Silva?
Then it's just like, it's too sad. Like it can't, because then Anderson Silva would become the meme. Have you guys seen all the memes about Nate Robinson? Like the Nate Robinson challenge was trending on Twitter. It was people like face first, like lying down on like random objects. That was like the #1 trend at that night.
Yeah, it was sad to watch Nate Robinson do that. That was just bad.
And the funny thing, like, well, it's not funny, but like the sad thing is people are now going to remember Nate Robinson for the guy that got knocked out. They're not going to remember him as the NBA player anymore.
Yeah, he was a badass basketball player, man. Crazy dunks. He was so small for the NBA, you know. He had a memorable career, and now the thing people are going to remember is him getting beaten up by a YouTube player in front of 1 million people. You know?
The thing is that fight, the ref really screwed him. That after the first knockdown, you could have called it. He was literally, the ref gave Nate Robinson like 20 seconds the first time he got knocked down because Nate was holding his head. He's like, oh, I don't think it was a back of the head. And then the second knockdown, you could tell he was out of it. The ref should have just waved it off there, saved him the whole like getting knocked out cold. Because literally the next punch Jake Paul landed knocked him out cold.
That was a tough one, man, because, you know, like you said, you know, he was complaining that he got hit in the back of the head. He clearly didn't. The ref obviously knew he didn't. To me, that was, you know, less a guy complaining about a foul, more a guy who suddenly realized getting punched in the face really hard is not fun, maybe having some regrets. Like, I think it was irresponsible of the ref to let him continue after that, because it was so clear that he was just like, hey, wait, this actually really sucks. I don't want to do this anymore, you know?
And his boxing skills was terrible. He literally just ran at him with his head down. And I'm like, you're gonna get clipped. Like you could throw the lightest jab, and it's gonna knock you down if you're running full speed with your head just straight up in the air.
You know, what is it? The Yair thing. I wanted to go back to that. Is because Dana said like, oh, they know something about Yair, but they haven't released the news, which means like he wants everybody to dig into Yair Rodriguez to see if what's going on with him. I'm wondering what's going on with Yair, man. Like, is he in some legal trouble or something like that? Is that why he's not going to be able to fight, or is he COVID? Did he get COVID, or I wonder? And he says he's not going to be able to fight for a while.
Well, you know it's not COVID if he said he's not going to fight for a while, because Dana White's booking guys that have COVID for the next week. So, and the thing is, I think it only fueled speculation, and I think it's only one of two things: is he's on Instagram training, so he's obviously not hurt. So then you can rule that out. So then all the speculation was he's either in a legal trouble or USADA flagged him, because that was the only things that are going to keep him out for that long, because he's on Instagram posting all the time training that he's fully ready. So it can't be an injury. You know it's not COVID because Dana White repooks those guys so quick. So to me, those are the only two things that really make sense.
I actually have a third theory, if you guys will bear with me here. He an amazing fighter, but I sort of get the sense that he might be a difficult guy to negotiate with. Kind of drives a hard bargain, because if you recall, there was that incident
he got cut
a year or two ago where he cut, and then was right back. You know, he didn't fight elsewhere. Suddenly, they just brought him back in, and I think, you know, it's possible that maybe he's entered into another one of these stalemates with the UFC, and you know he's not budging and they're not budging, and what's the best way to get him to budge? say something about him publicly, get people speculating that he's in legal trouble or failed a drug test, you can bet he's going to back down from whatever he's stuck on, if people are spreading, that kind of misinformation about him. That's my theory, honestly. I think that maybe
That's a good one.
He's maybe just tied up in another contract dispute. He's a guy that really, drives a hard bargain and knows his worth and isn't taking no for an answer right now.
Good for him then, man, if he's doing that, because
that's
he
just
does
a theory, but
he does deserve, everybody deserves more. And maybe, yeah, I just hope that they book that Yair Rodriguez fight. I feel like that fight makes so much sense,
be so
and
good
and
too.
and Yair does have that knockout, probably the best knockout ever. The under looping roller coaster elbow, right, of the Korean Zombie, and if he beats Zabit and finishes Zabit, I feel like Yair is right there for a title shot, right?
John, you and I debated this real quick. Cole, what do you think? Which knockout was better, Yair's or the Buckley knockout?
Buckley.
Ooh, it's a tough one, man.
Yeah, it's a tough one, but I'm gonna go with Yair. You know why? Is because he was losing the fight, and it was just like out of nowhere. You know what I mean? Like, we've kind of seen similar knockouts, I think, of the Buckley knockout, but for that elbow to land, man, it's just everything has to go right. Yeah,
and especially because literally 10 seconds before they were hugging, like the fight was over.
Yeah, but that just shows you. And I was talking to a coach, right, and they're telling me like, that fight showed you so much of the flaws of the Korean Zombie. Like, that fight showed you the flaws of the Korean Zombie and what he does, and it's like it's natural for him to kind of like rush forward with his arms out and just like punching straight, and then leaves him open for a lot of counters. And I think that's what Brian Ortega saw, and it worked perfectly.
And in that fight, he had no reason to go for a firefight. Like, if I don't recall, I think he was up 4-1, if not all 5 rounds at that point. Like, he was a clear winner of the decision. Like, he literally could have just circled away and not thrown a single punch and just easily won. Probably gotten a title shot, a number 1 contender fight off that fight. But then he does that. He just wants to get in a firefight all the time.
Yeah, that's why he's the Korean Zombie, though, because of that reason. Like, he is going to fight until the bell rings. But man, that was demoralizing to see him like just collapse, in that last second. You know what I mean? Everybody was just like, oh, that was an incredible fight. That's like fight of the year right there. And then the last second, it's like everybody just, I think the Korea, like, they had to shut down the country for a few hours after that fight. But anyways, before we go, man, I just wanted to get Cole's inductee to the MMA Hall of Fame. Usually I ask everybody that comes on who would they like to put into the Hall of Fame. I believe we've had like Anderson Silva put in, Jens Pulver, and a few others. Kid Yamamoto. I think Tom put in Kid Yamamoto.
Yes,
Cole, who and why?
I have to go Donald Cerrone. I know he's not on. For me, he's the guy that got me into MMA. I remember walking home from elementary school. My dad would work like early in the morning, get home at like 2 p.m. So he'd always be home when he'd get home from elementary school, and he'd have the Fight Network on, and it would be Donald Cerrone's like old WEC fights. That's how I got on. That's how I have to put him in, because without watching that, I don't know if I'd be doing this. I don't know if I even like MMA. So like Cerrone's that first guy that I started watching, that I started following like his whole career. So even like I think he's gonna be a UFC Hall of Famer eventually, just because he's just one of those legends of sport. But for me, that's the guy that got me into the sport, so I have to induct him.
Yeah, Cerrone is a legend, man. Like like that word legend gets thrown around a lot, but Cerrone is a legend. There's like different statuses. There's like legend status, there's icon status, right? And let me give you a perfect example of someone that's not a legend, but they're an icon. Conor McGregor. He's an icon, but he's not a legend. I feel like Cerrone's a legend, man. WEC, UFC, he set so many records. His WEC fights were always crazy. Like, they're totally different from his fights now, because back then he used to actually be on the ground a lot with a lot of the fighters that he fought. Remember the fights with Benson Henderson? There are some great fights right there. Yeah. So Cerrone, man, I completely agree, man. He does deserve to be in every Hall of Fame. Every combat sports Hall of Fame he should be in, because his contributions and the fights that he's put on and the performances that he's put on are gonna last forever, man, beyond like the grave. So Tano Cerrone is a BMF for real.
Well said.
Yeah, so Cole, man, that was fun, man. That's an hour and a half flew by. Usually, like, it always flies by. Like, it doesn't seem like an hour and a half when we have guests on, and that's a good thing because that's my biggest worry when we get onto these things. It's like, man, are we gonna drag on? Like, I have to keep this thing rolling. But Cole's good at interjecting, and Tom is always great co-hosting. So, yeah. So Cole, do you got anything that you wanna promote and something that's coming up that you can let us know about?
Well, the radio show I do on BJ Penn every Tuesday, a bunch of interviews. I already have next week set out, so it's I guess I'll tell you the lineup early, but it's Brandon Moreno, Artem Lobov, because he's fighting next Saturday. He's making his return to MMA. Hanato Moicano, Daniel Pineda, who's fighting Cub Swanson, and then Peter Barrett, who's fighting Chase Hooper. So that's gonna be next week's, but yeah, so always that show. I like doing that show. It's something Chris and Scott came to me this year, and I was kind of nervous because I've never been done video interviews, but I thought it's pretty cool. I'm glad November's over so the mustache can go. Tom sent me a couple messages. I had a couple fighters. Right when they got on, they're like, "Oh, you're really growing that out." I'm like, "Yeah, I hate it." They're like, "Oh, yeah, I used to do that when I was in my 20s too, and then I got smart and stopped doing it." But I'm glad that's gone though.
I think it was a great look, man.
I thought I'm gonna be on the side of I thought that looked pretty unusual to have that mustache, man. But it is what it is. You have to grow it out sometimes, and maybe I'm just jealous because I can't grow a mustache myself, which is weird, right? I'm a grown man, but I can't grow no mustache. If I do, it's like needles coming out my lip. Like it's not like your guys' mustaches. It's just like straight needles coming out. So
it's all about perseverance, man. Self-belief. You just gotta believe in yourself.
Yeah, so everybody, make sure you guys hit that subscribe button, like, share, whatever. If follow Cole on Twitter, follow Tom on Twitter and Instagram, and go definitely check out bjpenn.com and his show. And that's it, man. Thank you guys so much for coming on, and we'll see you guys next week. Next week's guest will be, let me see. Oh, we got Dan Tom.
Oh, an American, finally, eh? Get out of the Canadian.
But he's Asian, though.
You got about every single Canadian MMA media person there is, I think. Like a good chunk of them.
Yeah, big seriously. Chunk, like most of the percents. But anyways, next week is Dan Tom, and we're gonna talk about bets and a little bit different angle of the style that he does, how he covers the sport. But yeah, we'll have him on. And thank you guys so much for coming on, and thanks everybody for joining.